You've just released your aggregated market results for 2018. You reported an aggregated market loss of £1 billion for 2018. What's the outlook for 2019?
So I think at Lloyd's we're working really hard on three fronts at the moment. Throughout 2018, it was really important that we narrowed that performance gap and demonstrated to the world that we could be back in profit for 2019. Also today, we're talking, I'm excited to be talking about it, our view of what the future of the insurance market could look like, not just at Lloyd's, but globally. And then finally, obviously, in view of the report that came through Bloomberg last week, we're being very firm in the action that we're taking to stamp out any form of inappropriate behaviour or sexual harassment in our marketplace.
You've just brought up that report, so let me just give the information to viewers who might not be familiar with. So basically, Bloomberg Businessweek's Gavin Finch wrote an article taking a close look at the culture inside Lloyd's of London. The piece included testimonies from some of the 18 women who described an atmosphere of near persistent harassment at the 330-year-old London institution. The article went on to say that women with international experience in insurance and other areas of finance said the pervasive harassment at Lloyd's and the wider London market is unique. Many of the women Businessweek contacted said pursuing their abusers in the UK courts wouldn't be feasible given the high costs involved and potential damage to their reputations. Now, Lloyd's released a statement on the allegations ahead of the article's publication with Chief Executive John Neal, who's next to me on set, saying no one should ever experience harassment of any kind at work. Neal added that Lloyd's has worked really hard to put the broadest inclusion agenda at the centre of everything we do. The testimonies in the article were not from employees of Lloyd's of London, but were from employees of various major insurance companies and insurance brokers who work in the London market. The vast majority of people who work at the Lloyd's building are not employees of the exchange. And in a press statement released yesterday, Lloyd's outlined what it intends to do to combat the accusation. So let's look at that. The group has created an independent whistleblower hotline. It's laid out potential lifetime bans for inappropriate behaviour, and the proposals were agreed upon at an emergency meeting of industry executives convened yesterday by CEO John Neal. So let's continue the conversation with John Neal, who's here with me on set. So first of all, I want to commend you on the swift action that you've taken following this report by Bloomberg. But what can you say to reassure women that they will be safe, not just while they're in the Lloyd's of London building, but while they're having meetings with clients, socialising with colleagues and clients in the pubs and bars in the surrounding area?
In October last year, I was very honoured to take on the position as the Chief Executive of Lloyd's of London, and this is not the Lloyd's that I want to be part of, and not the Lloyd's that many of my colleagues feel they want to be part of either. Whether these instances that you reported occurred 10 days ago or 10 years ago, I don't care. It's just simply not acceptable in this day and age that any woman should not feel safe. So you've run through the actions that we've announced. One of them is very important, and that is to understand through an independent cultural survey what we're doing well, but more importantly, what more we can do. Because what I'm clear on is whatever we say, we are not doing enough. We've got to ensure that everybody, whether it's a woman or a man, should feel safe at any time of day doing anything that's associated with the Lloyd's market. I'm determined that that will be the case.
How can you actually, as I say, manage, though, to convince people that they'll feel safe also out of the Lloyd's of London building? Because it's one thing to police behaviour while people are at work, but a lot of the incidents that Bloomberg reported didn't happen within the building itself. So,
and you're right, of course, because Lloyd's operates globally. We don't just operate in London. I think what we've been clear is that we will impose our own sanctions, whatever any one of the constituent companies chooses to do within our marketplace. If anyone's found to have acted inappropriately, then we will be incredibly decisive. And as I said yesterday, that could include lifetime bans. So I think we're being as clear as we can that we will not accept any form of bad behaviour.
Now, a sceptic might say that this is a form of crisis management, or even say closing the door after the horse has bolted. Will you really be able to bring about an overhaul of culture that your predecessor, Inga Beale, with all her work on diversity, didn't manage to do in 5 years?
I think Inga did a fantastic job in really bringing the marketplace forwards. I think the inclusion pledge, the changes that the market have made have been incredibly significant. Everyone I've spoken to has been shattered by the article, so I have no doubt whatsoever that everyone wants to redouble their efforts to ensure that these events cannot occur.
Now, it's one thing to regulate behaviour. It's quite another to regulate thoughts. What will you be doing to actually change the kind of attitudes that lead to sexual misconduct?
So I think two things, I would say. Firstly, we're doing some mandatory training, and I am for all of my staff, so that they can really understand and look out for actions that they think are inappropriate that are undertaken by others. How do they intervene in a situation where someone is feeling uncomfortable? So, if you like, that's the experienced bystander that is able to sort of step into a situation and offer help. The other is really to understand, what's working well, and ensure that those lessons are learnt by everyone across our business.
What sort of response have you gotten when talking with industry executives? I know you had this crisis meeting on Monday.
I did. What's encouraged me was that none of the participants in our marketplace, and let's remember there's almost 100 insurance companies operating at Lloyd's and 300 broking firms, every single one of those entities has lined up behind what I said yesterday without hesitation. So I think everyone felt very, very disappointed to read the news and determined to stand behind the actions that I've been discussing.
Now, Bloomberg spoke to 18 women with something like 300 years of combined experience between them. And when Bloomberg spoke to these women, some of them said that they'd gone to their HR departments and actually been persuaded to stay silent. Do the HR systems actually need to change in the UK insurance industry? I
think from what I've seen, and I've seen our HR systems, we take any form of complaint incredibly seriously. But, I heard that. And so one of the things we said we would do is set up an independently managed and confidential multi-access point that anyone can go to if they feel they've got a complaint or a grievance. So at the very least, that can give them advice, or even more strongly than that, that can run a process where their complaint can be heard. It can't be right that people feel the way that they reported to Bloomberg.
Yeah, and what would you say to reassure women and possibly men who might know that there'll be sanctions against anybody who behaves inappropriately towards them, but they might be concerned that their reputation, nonetheless, will be at risk because they have come forward?
I can assure them that will not be the case. Their reputation will not be impacted at all. If they have anything to say to us, it will be heard in a confidential manner. So they should not feel worried at all about talking to us and reporting to us. And they should feel totally reassured that if there is proven action that is inappropriate, then we will take the most decisive action.
How will you measure success?
I think we'll measure success by looking at the cultural survey I'm talking about, and I think repeating that regularly so that we can see the changes. We spend a lot of time surveying our own people. What do they feel about what we're doing? And even this year, actually, what is a shame for me is that I announced only a few weeks ago significant changes in the workplace, particularly around maternity leave, which I think is industry leading, particularly around care policies, sabbaticals. I feel passionately that we have to look after our people. So what our people think and say and how they feel is everything as far as success is concerned for Lloyd's.
Are you setting any sort of time frame, or is this an ongoing work that you're going to be doing?
So I think we have to act quickly.
Yeah.
And I want to see the responses to the survey as quickly as it's practically possible to see those. But I don't think our work should stop. It should carry on. And you referenced earlier on the very good work that my predecessor, Inga Beale, started. That team that looks at inclusion, which is market-wide, is in fact meeting tomorrow. And they'll be having the same discussion that we're having today and thinking what more they can do.
Yes, I mean, and of course, we all acknowledge the great work that Inga Beale did do. But one of the criticisms that came up was that actually it was the focus on diversity that was a little bit of a concern over tackling sexual harassment head on. Can you reassure women and men out there that the priority here is taking an absolutely zero tolerance approach to sexual harassment on any part of the spectrum of that?
Let's be abundantly clear that it is, if there is anything lower than zero, it's lower than zero. We will not accept any form of sexual harassment at all.